or brand. I'm your host, Guillermo Bravo, and today we're discussing full funnel marketing, how to marry your cannabis events with your digital marketing strategy. This week, we're joined by Tara Falk, founder at Aim and Fire, whose experience as an event producer and experiential marketing consultant provides structure and guidance for cannabis brands and retailers looking to take charge of their events and their future relationships with their customers so they feel more valued before, during, and after an event. Welcome to the show, Tara. How are you?
Thank you so much, Guillermo. It's fantastic. I've been looking forward to our conversation for the last couple of weeks, so thank you for having me on to talk about this.
I'm excited to have you on. Before we kick it off today, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, MediaJel. MediaJel is the leading marketing platform helping cannabis brands reach consumers through their compliant ad network with real-time reporting and analytics dashboard that shows you conversion tracking through every step of the customer journey. Shout out to MediaJel. So Tara, let's kick it off. I mean, you have a ton of experience helping brands and retailers set up for success for in-store events and conventions. Can you tell us where cannabis brands may be missing the mark with their booths or their setup and suggest areas of improvement?
Absolutely. When I first started working in cannabis after a career in traditional CPG marketing, everything from food and beverages to tech, auto, and beauty. When I first fell in with my first brand in cannabis, I noticed that there was a generally lower standard of presentation in this emerging industry in a consumer-facing way than I was used to. So that is really the opportunity that I saw to come and influence some of these operating procedures and uniformity that I know to be kind of second nature in what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so. So the types of things that I was noticing were just sort of like untidy, unkept, supplies not being properly managed and kitted. And, everything from like lack of branded table coverings to, staff that's not in uniforms that aren't uniformed. So just small things that are distracting and prevent people from really focusing on the information that's being presented, even if it's small, even if it doesn't seem like a huge deal. Those things really do translate to, quick snap judgments that might make people infer, one way or another. From those small mistakes to lack of training of the brand and the talking points, the staff that are in the field to represent brands, they are provided with a range of materials, and in some cases more than others. So those are the types of things that I was noticing, and that I spent a lot of time now working with brands to develop their new marketing.
Okay. And what have you seen you mentioned distractions, right? And staying focused for your booth. What are some of the most common distractions that you've seen that people put at their booth or wear, or if it's simply consuming cannabis at the booth, that could be a
absolutely. Yeah, we all have our main distraction, in our hands, in front of our faces, in our pockets all the time. We're all looking remotely on the booth. So, if you approach a booth and the rep is on their phone, you don't know if they are like giving feedback like to a manager or like doing something that needs to be done, or if they're just like not interested in meeting your gaze and talking to you. So the main distraction that I notice with reps in the field are being on their phones, especially like in dispensary accounts. I get a lot of feedback about that from the people scheduling those demos and the bud tenders in store. So I notice that people, like if we're not doing that, when our reps are not doing that, we get instant positive feedback, identifying that as being different than par for the course. Because I think that's something a lot of people do. If there's downtime, if there are not people currently at the booth, they're getting other work done, but that kind of closes you off and makes you inaccessible to people that might want to approach and start a conversation. So it's something I try to be really aware of and make sure that my staff is really aware of. But other distractions, there are lots of things that will keep people clear of your booth. I'm personally not a huge fan of the spin the wheel and win a prize tactic. It's kind of just like a canned option, and I think we can be a little more creative than those things. I'm also a vocal a vocal opponent of the booth babe tactic. I spend a great amount of energy kind of fighting against what's been done in many other industries, but definitely still in cannabis, where we just put some pretty women in place and give them like as little clothing as we can, and think that that's going to attract people to the booth because they're attractive women. But that's just something that I think that we've moved well beyond at this point. At least we should have. So if there are brands that are still doing that, I think it speaks really negatively to their potential customers and to their employees as well, because that's just not how you value people for what they're really bringing to the table professionally. And knowledge about the brand and product is the most important thing.
Yeah, and I've seen that it's a little more, I guess, at a few events, right? Like MJBizCon and Hall Flowers is usually the attractive girls in a bikini or something, trying to get you in to buy, to get you in as a retailer to buy from their brand, right? And I have been going to events since 2014 in cannabis, and I have seen the evolution of this, and it was heavy in California, number one. I don't see this as much in some of the other states, especially LA, which is, I think, the mecca of that anyways. So, and I've seen the evolution, right? And it depends on if you're selling products or if you're a retailer or if you're a tech company. Like, there's time and a place for things. And if, like you said, if that's how you want to present your brand, like it's 2022 now. It's like we can all sit back.
Of attractive, outgoing people that know their stuff, that have all of the tools at their disposal to be successful in those roles. But what I'm referring to are situations where there is no more equipment than the little outfit provided to people.
Got it.
For example, I was at an event just last weekend, and I approached one of the only brand activations in the room. It was a cannabis brand's Halloween party, and there was a genetics company set up along the side of the room. And I always network with the brands on site when I go to an event. So I approached the booth to see what they were offering or what the deal was, or if they wanted some of my data or how I could engage. And the young woman that they had staffed at the booth literally winked at me and said, "Yeah, they're great." As if to say, I don't know anything about this brand, this product. I can't really have a conversation with you about what they offer, what my goals are here. I'm just holding it down. And she was, seated, and she blended in with everyone else around her. There was nothing to identify her as a representative of the brand. So for all purposes, there was no one there for me to talk to, and no information that I could have, acquired from her to follow up. She had no proper funnel to the person at the company who would be able to provide you with that information, and it's really just a missed opportunity. A lot of people saw the name and saw the brand, but nobody got any valuable information or any pitch whatsoever. And those are just, like I said, missed opportunities.
Yeah, and it all comes down to education and training, right? So if you're not trained, number one, on the before that, the hiring process, right? Hire the right people and train them specific to whatever product, brand, genetics, the source, like whatever is important for that product category. I mean, you should have that available, at least on your phone, where you can take a look at it. Like, here's my checklist and bullet points of things. It's a differentiator, right? We need some. This is all basic marketing and sales.
Some people are with tools, you do more harm than good a lot of the time, and that is an expense. There's usually a sponsorship fee associated with these events. You have to pay the staff, and you wind up expending significant resources to make negative impressions if you don't train properly and you don't, send people out with what they need to be successful in those roles.
Yeah. And what can brands do to set themselves apart from their competitors when visiting a dispensary and engaging with customers?
I really think you have to be hyper specific about the type of people that are representing the brand. Like you said, hiring is the first step. You have to hire the right people. You have to have people that are consistent with the image and the values that brand is propping themselves up behind. You also have to think about things like what everyone else is doing. For example, everyone in the dispensary has got very similar premiums for the most brand specific with the items that they're handing out. Make sure these are things that folks are going to keep and incorporate into their daily lives as a reminder of that experience, especially for bud tenders too, because bud tenders really enjoyed the conversation with Luna about bud tenders being kind of like your outside sales team. And you want to equip those people with gear to sell your product when you're not even in store for promotions. And if you do that correctly with bud tender trainings and with staff that knows to engage the bud tenders when traffic is slow on the dispensary floor, then you can make sure that they are, effective ambassadors of your brand in that role and in any other roles that they may come to hold throughout their careers in cannabis. But I think that having that training and having those uniformed kids, making sure the staff really understand like all of the goals beyond just, say this when people walk up to you, say that. There's a lot more that you can do to be effective. You can work on elevating the merchandising. You can talk about better shelf space. You can, even I spend a lot of time just studying other product when I'm in the dispensary so that I can speak with people about what's really going to meet their needs.
Yeah.
Because I think it's not, again, it can be a negative impression to just try to sell people on what you have at the moment if it's not right for them. So I am someone who really cares about the right product for people, because I think the way we're going to grow and advance the industry as a whole is by giving people accurate information that's really going to help them. So I want to know where I can direct someone, if not the brand that I'm currently representing. I want to have a wider context to be able to point them in a direction that's going to solve the problem they're looking to solve.
Yeah, and a lot of that is self-education. I know that bud tenders are on the front line. They're really the face of your company. So really invest in them as a retailer and as a brand. Build a relationship with the bud tenders, incentivize them, invite them to VIP events. There's brands are a dime a dozen nowadays in California. What makes you special? Why am I going to care as a bud tender? Right? If I'm not using your products, if I'm not even a fan of the forward, need education. Soul Train is a good platform that I would recommend that creates landing pages for brands that are educational for bud tenders. So things like that, just really be supportive. Right? So be supportive of that team, be supportive of the staff, whether it's education, whether it's digital assets, whether it's swag, whatever it might be, and make sure that you are engaging with your customers and that you are leveraging these opportunities for vendor days and other ways to really build your customer list and engage with them and build that relationship. There's no real replacement of that nowadays, and especially post-COVID, when people are yearning for that communication and building relationships with people in person now. So.
There are a few other platforms I think are worth mentioning, like CRM platforms that are really great for connecting the sales team with the field staff. A couple of those being the Rec Suite and Outfield, and platforms that are shared by the entire team with account-specific information and feedback, where you can open up the account specifically and see exactly who was there, on what date, and their notes about what they accomplished while they were in store. And it's the VA team, that's where photos, recaps, and consumer comments go. And I'm also a huge advocate of putting in personal details about bud tenders that we know in those accounts and what we know about them, when they might be in store, and something that we found out about them that remembering will really go a long way. So doing things that others are not doing. I would like for everyone to be doing these things, but the truth is they are not.
Yeah, and as far as brands currently in the market, who do you think connects?
They've been selling since the mid-90s, and this is brewery soda, but I'd like for everyone to be doing these things, but the truth is they are not. And when you do, it really makes an impact on people.
Yeah, and as far as brands currently in the market, who do you? COVID was cooking, swag, whatever it might be, and make sure that you are engaging with your customers and that you are leveraging like these opportunities for vendor days and other ways to really build your customer list and engage with them and build that relationship. There's no really replacement with that nowadays, and especially post COVID, like people are yearning for that communication and building relationships with people in person now. So
there are a few other platforms I think are mentioning, like CRM platforms that are really great for connecting the sales team with the field staff. A couple of those being Rexly and Outfield, and platforms that are shared by the entire team with account-specific information and feedback, where you can open up the account specifically and see exactly who was there on what date and their notes about what they accomplished while they were in the store. And if it's the VA team, that's where photos and recaps and consumer comments go. And I'm also a huge advocate of putting in personal details about like bud tenders that we know in those accounts and what we know about them, like when they might be in store and like something that we found out about them that remembering will really like go a long way. So like doing things that others aren't doing, I would like for everyone to be doing these things, but the truth is they are not. And when you do, it really makes an impact on people.
Yeah, and as far as brands currently in the market, who do you think connects best with their customers and why?
I recently took on more responsibility with a company called Jones Soda, who launched Mary Jones beverages recently, which is a cannabis-infused version of a soda that they've been selling since the mid-90s. And this has quickly become the most successful launch that Kiva Sales and Service has ever had. They're in over 120 accounts in just 60 days. And I think the reason that Jones is such a huge like pull for people is the authenticity and the engagement that's always been part of their brand. They provide so many opportunities for people to contribute to the image of Jones. Like every label on their bottles is submitted by fans of the brand. They submit photos on the website, and those labels are what they use as their branding on their products. So it's all community and user-generated content. And we're working on something really cool right now. It's called the Mary Zine, and it is a full-size magazine that will be used as a leave behind in accounts that features the creative pursuits of bud tenders and people working in the cannabis industry, like outside of their roles in cannabis, whether they're writers or filmmakers or musicians or graphic designers. We're featuring their work and their creative pursuits. And just like allowing for a platform for people to be seen for like all of the different aspects of their personality and what they bring, you know, from their personal lives into their professional roles in cannabis, I think really speaks to people. And we kind of hold the value that if you really have something good and you're really what you say you are, you don't have to try too hard to show that to people, they're going to notice. And I think that's what good branding really is you know, just giving people the image to see if they align with what you are or not, you know, because target demographics are going to be different for everybody. Obviously, not everyone loves a sugary soda, but people love Jones, and even people who don't drink soda, they recognize and they love Jones, and they have some kind of nostalgic experience or, you know, positive memory that was associated with the product. So that's really, really valuable, and something that I think that new brands need to work to build is like that lore and that like long-term story of how we bring more people into the work that we're doing in like a tangible way, not just by them buying the products, but by them contributing to what the brand is.
Yeah, and there's you know, branding is important, right? I mean, branding is the promise that you're making with your audience. It's that unique story, identity, and it's really important for cannabis. And you can see that with Jungle Boys, Cookies, some of these other brands that as soon as they go into a new market, like they sell out. There's a line, they have a cult following, and it's really important. And there's that, what's the water company that just got to raise a bunch of money?
Liquid Death. Yeah.
Liquid Death. Yeah, there's like 700 million valuation. So that alone just should tell you that branding is really important, especially if it's for water in a metal can. You know, it's like. And
Liquid Death, they've taken a very similar approach in just supporting communities that they want to be, you know, representative of. They just place that product like directly in the hubs, including many of the cannabis events production houses and agencies that I work with. Many are partnered with Liquid Death, and Liquid Death is putting the product there for a very specific reason, to speak to, you know, the creatives and the gathering places. And I think that's so smart.
B2C audience, what are some of the goals that you would set beforehand?
Based on how many people are attending, I would set some goals about how much data you want to capture, how many people you want to connect with, to add to an email newsletter, or just like collect feedback about your product and just kind of development ideas, maybe identify some people for potential partnerships if there are other brands and companies expressing like real alignment and interest in what you're doing and where your brand is headed. It can be really valuable to identify some opportunities to cross promote or do some collaborative campaigns, things like that.
Yeah, I would always spend a lot of time, I would say that like the 2 weeks before the event, just seeing if I can get an index of all the brands, all the retailers that are going to be there. If you're attending like an MJ Impact, they actually have apps like Benzinga as well. They have an app where you can reach out to people if you're an executive or you want to set up a meeting. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do before the event too, to just make it, you know, as successful as possible. Another thing I typically do is I engage with the people I want to connect with on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, are the two most effective I've found of just reaching consumers and these B2B professionals, executives, like everyone's on Instagram. So, and most cannabis professionals are on LinkedIn. So I typically use those to find opportunities of people I want to meet with on the sales side and branding side. But if you're attending like if you're attending like an investor focused event, what are some of the goals you would set, and how would that be different than, let's say, like a Hall of Flowers or MJ BizCon? Yeah,
I think that's really important. Like regardless of the type of event you're attending, even if I'm attending an in-store demo, I often find myself in conversations that are kind of more like investor focused, because people are out in the world and they're out in the wild and you never know who you're going to be talking to. So I think that at all times it's really important to have like a dialed in like mission statement and core values and like long and short term goals of the company that you speak to, as well as just kind of like a personal and business pitch perfected. Just being able to confidently and clearly speak to what you do at the company and what the company does within the wider context of the industry, and like what we hope to do and change and be, I think are all really, really important things. And that doesn't just apply here. I think that applies for everyone, everywhere. Those are really valuable skills to hone. So I spend a lot of time also making sure that the ambassadors I send into the field understand that and can communicate with people at the high level at investor events, as well as, you know, customers coming into the dispensary that might not have ever heard of the brand before.
Yeah, and especially at these events, just know your audience, right? Mm-hmm. Just like know who you're speaking with at these investor events. Maybe there'll be people in money, or there'll be executives, or there'll be people that maybe want to partner up with you. So just know your audience and have your pitch ready for all the different audiences, right? Like your 5 second, 30 second, or a minute and a half pitch. Have that ready, and memorize that. Work with your team to come up with questions or objections and responses to all those, so that you have a good game plan when you're talking about your product, your service. And anytime someone has anything to say, positive, negative, have a rebuttal ready and practice before and be prepared. Is key.
It is also a unique challenge I find in the cannabis industry, because our industry events don't look like a lot of other industry events. Yeah. They are a lot more casual and laid back, and people come with all, backgrounds and flair and like personal style. And it can be hard for the ambassadors to identify like executives and decision makers, as opposed to just like event attendees that are there to have a good time and smoke a joint, have a drink. So it's a real like gap to bridge to get people in the mindset where they're understanding that even though this guy seems pretty chill, he's like very, very, very important and like a high level decision maker at, you know, a company that we hope to have a business relationship with. So there's like cats flying around all over the place. I'm sure this will be highly entertaining video recording. So yeah, it's just something that the ambassadors, and that's another thing, I try to make sure that the staff that we have like coming into these settings is really like comfortable working in that kind of a setting where it is kind of an ambiguous environment where everyone is responsible for themselves and their own goals and their own objectives in that setting. So it can be a real challenge to keep people like on task because that is like an easy environment to get distracted in.
Exactly. And what about if you're there to connect with retailers and expand into new markets? What would you be your goals in that instance?
We'd want to identify the buyers, of course. We'd want to know how many buyers are attending the event, which companies these buyers are coming from, and hopefully reach out to these people ahead of time and set some meetings and some times for them to come by and connect directly. But if not, just making sure that we can identify even other representatives of those companies who could link us with the buyer or, you know, whatever we need to do to hopefully set some meetings while we're there or get connected.
Exactly. And now that you have the events that you want to attend, whether it's B2C, B2B, and all your goals, it's time to engage and build relationships with your audiences, right? So pre-event promotion is key. What are some of the ways to get eyes on your business pre-event or engage with other businesses that are going to the event as well?
Yeah, most events that will happen, they will come out with some kind of a flyer or a write-up about the programming and dates, times, entertainment, other brands will be listed on the flyers. And it can be really worthwhile to, make a big play to follow everyone else who will be involved and start liking and commenting and sharing the promotion that your other, the peers of yours in the space are sharing. That's a very supportive thing to do. And most of the time people will return the favor. So it's a really easy way to get some cross promotion. You can also share information about where your booth will be located or what you'll specifically be offering at the event, as well as what other brands will be offering. If you're in the know about those things, you can hot link to your website so that people can look around at your product offerings beforehand and come in with some knowledge already off the bat about what it is that you do. Like we talked about, you can schedule some meetings in advance. If you know of people that are in the area or who could be in the area, it's always worth reaching out to invite people specifically to come out and see what you're up to, because so often we can get a lot more done in person than we can, sending emails and DMs back and forth. A lot of the time, if you can just get 5 or 10 minutes with someone in person, you can really close something down in a much firmer way. You can also consider inviting influencers and content creators and people with wider reach that can return assets that can be leveraged after the fact. But that's kind of something that you have to do in advance to have people like that around to kind of tell the story of what's going on site.
Wonderful. And as far as, advertising for both B2B and then B2C audiences, can you discuss some of the different marketing and advertising you can do for both and how those will be different depending on your goals?
Definitely. Yeah. You can do email marketing and text blasts for both B2B and B2C marketing. The content is going to be different just because of the knowledge level and the unique goals of each. You're not going to be sending information about your products and their retail prices and promotions out to your retail partners selling those products, but you might send them information about limited time offers or new SKUs that might go into rotation and things like that. There's also SEO and paid ads and things like that are going to be effective just for like wider brand awareness that reaches your B2B folks as well as your B2C folks, like on social media and on these business platforms that we're using.
Wonderful. And as far as during the event, what are some of the creative ways that brands and retailers can engage with their audiences, in person?
I think it's really important to prioritize real-time posting and sharing from events for the folks that can't make it, or just like the folks who are on site who want options to share content that they're in, or content that's relevant to them, or experiences that they're having like in the moment. I think having someone designated on site that's logged into the social media channels or that has a direct line to someone on site, and posting those things as soon as possible, as soon as they're happening, even before someone has time to go through and like edit and create a more detailed, in-depth recap. That's something you can do on site, and always should, for sure. And I don't think that people utilize that practice quite enough, and taking high quality photos that you can bank and use on social media for months to come. And that's another thing we talk about a lot with Mary Jones. They want all of the branding and the imagery that people see to be folks from the trade. They want there to be like familiar faces that you recognize, that you can say like, oh, hey, there's Guillermo, there's Tara, there's so-and-so from such and such company. And we all start to, know each other a little better that way.
Agreed. And one trick I always have up my sleeve is live videos. When you're at events, live videos are key, because there's so many distractions when people are scrolling through their feed. People have thousands of friends nowadays on their social media, and in most cases, they're not going to see your posts or your stories because you just have too many accounts in there. Live is a great way to just jump to the front, because live is going to show up in the beginning of your feeds, especially if you're on Instagram.
That's true. I get notifications when people go live on certain platforms, like people that I'm even just loosely connected with. I get a push notification if they go live, and I'm pretty likely to open that up because I like to know what's going on. So that's a great tip.
Agreed. And then, in addition to that, we all know how important, first party data is to capture when you're at these events. And this is where MediaJel excels. And if you don't capture someone's name, email, phone number, or social media accounts, how do you plan to reconnect with them and then retarget them? So Tara, what are some of your favorite ways and methods for capturing first party data from consumers for your brand?
I think that a simple Google form is still one of the best ways to get that quickly and painlessly. I find that having people that are really good with their hands and willing to input this information for people quickly and politely and without making it a task, that is a pretty involved role on site. And people, if you pass off an iPad or some kind of digital device to someone, a lot of the time they won't want to do that. They won't want to give their information. They won't want to go through the motions and fill in all of those fields. But if you have someone that's willing to do that for them, that's just conversationally asking them, what's your name? What company are you with? Would you mind if we got an email address to follow up about insert thing that is definitely relevant to them, so it doesn't seem like we're just tossing them on the list to receive, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 emails a week. People don't really want to get spammed, but if you can make it clear that it's going to be relevant to them and that it's worth connecting about, I think it's so much easier to walk people through that process. So I always encourage people to honestly just be hospitable and willing to, do the legwork for people. So there are other ways to capture that data. There are apps, countless apps. You can create your own app, you can brand it, you can do whatever you feel is necessary. But I think a Google form that's just queued up and ready to be, submitted and refreshed is totally sufficient. And those things go really cleanly over to a spreadsheet where you can work with the data. That's my favorite way. But I also also highly encourage like social follows. It's really easy to get people to whip out their phone and just offer them something small for following the brand. Most of the time they'll remain followers. So that can really pay off too.
Yeah, agreed. When you're doing this too, you should definitely have a marketing opt-in message that they check. So not only do you capture their name, email, phone number, but then you also got their permission to advertise them, advertise to them long term. So that's a key thing to remember. There's a lot of laws around this that if they don't opt in, you can actually get fined for sending someone a text message. And it's $15,000, I believe, per text message. So it's not something you want to mess it around with. So definitely make sure that you're compliant when you're doing this, that you're getting the opt-ins. And I know companies like Spring Dig, Alpine IQ, Happy Cabbage, I know they have forms that you can just embed on a page or a website. So instead of even managing these client details, they could just directly go into your CRM. So you skip that step of the spreadsheets and everything too. So like whatever you can do to capture customer information, but also you need to be aware of the privacy concerns and everything kind of going on nowadays, and people have to opt into everything. So,
right. And we have to be very careful that field staff that may or may not be trained in detail on aspects like that, you have to make sure that they're not opting in on their behalf and skipping steps and just kind of going through the motions or just assuming that it's cool just to get that extra little bit of data in. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's also something that I'm always deterring people from doing. You've got to ask, you've got to make sure they see it. Because like you said, that is a huge fine. 15,000 per text message is nothing to scoff at. So very important.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking post-event as well, like getting people's information in person, getting their social media following, that's a great start. If you do get their social media following, there's a way that you can use stories, QR codes, swipe ups to actually convert them to opt into your CRM. So there's some ways that you can convert people over there as well. So social media is important. It's probably it's the lowest barrier to entry to get someone's Instagram, right? It's just like, what's your Instagram, what's your LinkedIn, and then go from there. And then post-event, how do you stay connected with them and how do you communicate with them and what do you do in the follow-up to engage with them, Tara?
Yeah, I think a personal email from the actual individual that they met on site is a really important touch after an event, especially if any sort of like real connection was made or there is follow-up that clearly needs to be done. I think that should probably go to everybody that came by the booth and was physically met up with. But I think that just sending a personal note to say that it was nice to meet. And I am not a big fan of like copy and paste. Everyone gets the same email. So these should be handwritten. These should be coming from the person that was like there on site that had the conversation. Or if that was a brand ambassador, it should be like a detailed report that's coming through about like what was discussed and like what we can do to further that discussion, as well as more of the pre-event strategy of liking, sharing, commenting on relevant things that are coming from others that were there. Keeps you top of mind for people and like reminds them about ways that they could utilize whatever it is that you're offering.
Yeah, and I found it really effective. I guess one thing I forgot to mention is to have a QR code on your phone or as your wallpaper, and you just pull that up and boom, you share that with people and then you get their information. And the reason I bring that up is because I have found that text messaging has been the most effective communication method for me to build a relationship, to if I get that information in person. I saw this at one event, but I had a friend of mine who would take selfies. So a selfie of you and that person and put that as their profile picture so that you know who it is. And then just text messaging in general, I think that's the easiest way to get a hold of anyone nowadays. Social media, you have distractions. Email, you have distractions. Text message, yeah, you have them, but even Apple, they separate out your contacts versus people that are not in your contacts. So it's really challenging for for you to get a hold of someone nowadays. And I found that just text messaging in general has been by far the most effective. And it's just the most personal too, right? Like you have someone's phone number.
I agree completely. Yeah. I am someone who really likes for calls to be scheduled, which can be difficult because when I schedule a call, I try to make sure that I am really truly like stationary and clear around that call, because as someone who works in the field, I'm, covering like hundreds of miles in a given day sometimes. So try to be safe and not text and drive on the road. It definitely happens occasionally, but I try to deter myself in any possible way. So I definitely prefer text too and get back to them quicker than most other avenues, but agreed.
Yeah, I've had people hunt me down on WhatsApp and Signal and all these other apps. So it's not just text messaging.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get a hold of someone, there's a lot of channels nowadays.
And it becomes interesting when you're connected with someone across multiple channels and even like fairly personally, to the extent that you could just call, and we all still find ourselves like bopping around to different platforms. Like I can think of people that in a given week I speak to them on Slack, WhatsApp, email, text, we call, so I think that there's also something to be said for like at least within your team figuring out what your spaces are, like what your workspaces are. But that's kind of a different conversation. I think that we've got a lot of options.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And yeah, just to recap, you want to make sure that you're prepared for these events, and you want to make sure that you maximize your time at these events and you capture, whether you're doing sales, those contacts in your CRM, or on the B2C side, if you're building up your customer list. Really make sure you have the technology and the training and the team in place to make it the most effective event that you attend in cannabis, because it can be quite expensive. And yeah, we covered a lot today of the different types of events, B2C, B2B, different tactics to prepare for the event, pre, post, and during. So there's just a lot to think about, and just make sure that you budget for this and that you really have the goals in place that you want to achieve, because you're not going there to socialize, you're going there to grow your business. There is the social aspect and networking and building relationships with people, but you want to make sure that you're most effective and you're documenting everything and you're saving all this information. So, but before we jump today, let's cover a little bit, Tara, about the different guerrilla marketing tactics that you can use for a brand. So, I know many brands that are just starting out, they don't have a lot of money. There's a lot of effective guerrilla marketing strategies that I've seen in the past. Is there any examples or case studies that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to work with a few brands that are able to utilize sampling in their guerrilla and field marketing, which is unique to cannabis because most brands cannot sample their live products in dispensaries. Yeah. You can do that at consumption events and industry events. So I really do advocate for sampling. People want to try before they buy. They want to get one. My policy is you get one free. I like to show people like what I can do before they enter into a binding agreement. And that's kind of what you want to do with your customer. You want to show them what you could do before you ask for anything from them. But if you're not able to do that, you can achieve the same thing with a special offer and a call to action that sends people potentially into a Target account to redeem the offer. You can, you could target like sporting events and concerts and beach days with high traffic and anywhere that people are gathering. As long as you're verifying age, you can have conversations with people, directing them into a dispensary, but you do have to verify their age. So you really can't be doing this out in public where you might be speaking to like minors or talking to folks within earshot of their kids. So this is probably better suited for venues and settings that are already age gated somehow. For example, I recently saw that Major League Baseball has got their first cannabis sponsor. So I'm sure there will be areas on the site, probably the beer areas, the 21 plus areas, where it would be an option to engage with people and talk about those product offerings. So I'm really excited for more, or rather like less barrier to entry to those spaces for us. And it seems to be happening quicker and quicker, but we do have lots of like compliance factors to be mindful of with guerrilla marketing and cannabis brands. So if you are an edible or an infused beverage, a non-medicated version of the product that can be sampled in dispensaries or at off-premise events is really, really helpful. But if you can't do that, I would definitely encourage like special offers and promotions and clear calls to actions where people can go to try that product at a discounted rate or with maybe a extra premium offered with purchase or something like that. Or the offer could also be like an exclusive experience or something like that too. Like I've done customer appreciation parties where it's kind of a surprise and delight where someone enters the dispensary while this event is happening. They're directed to a secret little party around the corner that it's 21 plus and it's a consumption event, and they're able to try a couple of other products from brand sponsors. So if brands are deterred from like large sponsorship fees and coming into larger events with multiple other brands, they can always host their own events too, which can be a lot more cost effective, and you've got more eyes on your own brand and more control creatively over what that experience is going to be like. So I've worked with a couple of dispensaries to host our own events as opposed to like partnering with an event that already exists.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for all your insights and everything that you've shared with our audience. Really appreciate it, Tara, and looking forward to meeting you in person at some of these events. Can you tell everyone where they can reach you and learn more about Aim and Fire?
Absolutely. I would love to. We are very active on Instagram. That's where you can see the most like visual representation and kind of social engagement around the kind of work we're doing. I'm also active on LinkedIn. Eventually I will get on these other platforms. I'll start tweeting. I'll get on more of those. But right now, Instagram and LinkedIn, and I'm available at email, tara@aimandfire.com. with hyphens between each word. So tara@aim-and-fire.com.
Thank you again, Tara, and thank you to our audience for logging in today and learning about all the insights in regards to marketing at an event. Once again, this is the Cannabis Marketing Live podcast, sponsored by MediaJel, where we cover the latest marketing trends and strategies for growing your cannabis brand, delivery service, or business. Thank you again, everyone, for joining and logging in today. The next podcast will be airing in 2 weeks on Thursday. So log in at 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be diving deep into more marketing topics in cannabis. Thank you, everyone, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye.